the things in my life that I've not accomplished, the things that were the things I never tried. And the reason I didn't try them was because I was afraid to try.
All right, guys, we're bringing a buddy of mine today, T.D. Smyers. He was 31 years in the Navy, was a base commander at the latter part of that career. He's jumped out in the civilian world. Now he's CEO of United Way of Tarrant County. He's kicking ass and taking names, and he's going to walk you through his journey, his ups, his downs, his failures, and his wins. Hey guys, today I'm bringing you a really cool guest. I'm bringing you T.D. Smyers. This dude is just known everywhere in our hometown of Fort Worth, so it's going to be fun having him on here. So I'm going to read you his bio. I guarantee I won't make it through it very far. He's a former college athlete, which I didn't know that. T.D. has been to fat and back in the last several years is what this says. I don't know what that means, but we'll find out. He likes science fiction movies, long walks on the beach in search of rum, and he doesn't read enough, but thinks he thinks about reading a lot. That's going to be one of the best intros I've gotten in a long time, brother. I appreciate that. So screw all the technical stuff, man. TD, tell us your story. How the hell did you get here?
I-10 heading west. It's the fat and back thing is just, I put on a lot of weight as I became an adult, and I've dropped it now, moving in another direction, but that was just kind of a way to kick that off. And that's why you didn't know I was a former college athlete, because you said, that fat guy, there's no way. Dude,
you're big ass, there's no way, no.
That's right. You can't move that fast around a track, but I did it one time. But I'm from this area. I grew up around here and got into the U.S. Naval Academy. That was kind of my big break and ticket out of small town Texas. I grew up in a small town in Wiles County, and when I got accepted at the academy, I'm pretty sure it was computer error. I'm very positive of it. Some guy named Smithers is going, I had perfect SAT scores. What's the guy got to do? Right? But I took it and ran with it. And it was a super opportunity. It got me to do something that I could have only dreamed about. So I got to fly with the Navy for 31 years. And then weirdly enough, at the end of my career, I didn't start out to be a careerist. I was going to go maybe jump into law or something after that. But despite myself, the Navy kept promoting me, and I wound up commanding.
That's only because they didn't know any better.
See, that's what I mean. That's what's good about making decisions in D.C. detached from everything, but it worked for me. But so I got chosen to command NAS Fort Worth, and the irony of that is when I left Fort Worth, Texas, to go to the Naval Academy in 1980. There was no NAS Fort Worth. It was an Air Force base.
Right.
No chance that I was ever going to come back and command that base. And then, series of things happened, base realignment and closure, and it got closed down and then reopened as NAS Fort Worth. And I was chosen to come command the base. And so I made the decision on the interstate coming through Texarkana, if I don't piss everybody off there, this is where I'm going to hang up the spurs, because, you're a base commander, you're outward facing, you get to know a lot of people. It's a super opportunity if you do it, and you're blessed with some degree of success to go ahead and make that transition. And that's what I wanted to do. So.
No, that's cool. I didn't know you were base commander. What year were you base commander?
From April of 2008 to July of 2011.
Okay.
Normally it's only a 2-year tour, and I got this weird call one time. It was really great. It was, hey, TD, would you consider staying in command for another year? And, right?
That never happens, right?
No, it never happens. At first I thought it was a prank phone call. But the chief of staff wasn't a funny guy, so I got over that pretty quick. The deal was the person that had been selected to be my relief had just reported in to Secretary of Defense's office, and they hang on to you. They don't let you go. Right. And so they said, now we got to hang on to him. He's got to be there for 12 more months. And so I said, twist my arm, and I got to see all the stuff that we had planned actually come to fruition. Because, at the speed of the federal government, it takes a fiscal year or two to make stuff happen. So it was cool. Got to see the new front gate come in, the new commercial gate, and all the stuff we worked on at the base. And that was a great tour, to leave on, because you leave in your own time. You get, as you know, Donnie, you leave the military either in a box or on 2 legs at some point. And,
right.
So I wanted it to be on my own time and get out when I was at the top of my game, not, punch drunk.
But anytime you're not in a box is a good day. So if you can leave by not being in a box, it's a good time.
Yeah, better than the alternative, that's for sure.
Right. And so you retired, you got out of there. How many years did you do it altogether?
31 years.
God bless. Were you just a glutton for punishment? Or?
Well, like I said, despite my best efforts, they kept promoting me. And there's a lot. There's actually a lot to that, Donnie. My wife, I met her when I was stationed up at the Pentagon. She's from Northern Virginia, and she's great. She's an artist, photographer, has a studio in Keller.
She got to be a hell of a woman to put up with your ass.
Right? Hey, look, there's no accounting for taste, but plenty for patience.
Right.
And she's awesome. She's a hot ticket. She's a great lady. But so she says you're not the traditional military person, is what she tells me. And I think that represents a lot of things. There's a caricature of military leadership, right? That take that hill and everybody blindly follows because people have watched too many late night movies. And the reality is leadership.
Well, they don't think about that in the Air Force and stuff. I mean,
yeah, it's a different animal, right?
Because the Air Force would fly over that hill, would you? Right?
Yeah. Secure HBO. Okay. It's a different animal. The caricature that people have of military leadership is like that. And the reality is, as you and I have experienced, it's about inspiring. It's about motivating. Right. It's about what we refer to as, reverent authority. People follow you because they're led to follow you. They're inspired to follow you. You set the right tone, example, and direction. And, when you're in the military, you wear your rank on your collar, right, or on your sleeve. And so there's that element of the old kind of legitimate authority that you're placed in this position. And I think that represents everybody's understanding. They kind of ignore that the rest of it exists. And I found that in nonprofits, people ask me all the time, well, you're a nonprofit. That's got to be really different. Now, I'll tell you, the workforce is different, But it's in some ways it's really, really similar. Like, for example, diversity. Most diverse organization I've ever been part of, and inclusive organization I've ever been a part of, was U.S. Navy.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, and people are like, is this military guy going to understand diversity? I said,
I tell people all the time, and people don't think about it, but you're taking guys from 50 different states, from inner cities of the country.
Oh, yeah.
And throwing them in one little 30-man unit and say, get along.
Yeah. Get along, and you know what? Find commonality.
Right.
Find common cause, find common mission, and they do. We do. With rare exceptions, we unify. And
I tell the people, if they remember the movie Remember the Titans, there's that scene where they go off campus and they all come together as a really tight team.
Yeah.
And then they come back to the world. Well, that's what happens in the military is everybody comes together. You become that really tight team. It's when you come back out into the real world. Now you got to deal with all the outside influences and everything. So it's wild ride.
Great movie and a great analogy.
Yeah. So awesome. So you get out of here. You stay in the hometown of Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
How long? What happened after that? Where'd your journey take you from there? Because did you take time off and say, I'm putting my feet up and relaxing for a little while, grabbing that bottle of rum, or did you immediately pick up?
No. My wife required more of me than that. So no, it didn't happen. I would have loved to, but it's funny. I mean, trying to transition for me was a trial and error thing, and I screwed a lot of stuff up because. Well,
I think that's for everybody. Just for the record, is you either went into the military not knowing what the hell you were going to do in the first place if you went to the military, right? So you carry that once you get out. I think a lot of people really stumble over what's that trajectory, where should they go once they get out.
Yeah. And people tell you all the time you've got marketable skills. And, one of the things that's both a support, right, is people say, hey, we support our veterans and we really want to talk to you about a role. The problem is generally ends there, right? We want to talk to you about a role. And a lot of people never call back and they don't call because they don't really know what to do with you. They don't know how to translate the stuff you did when you were in uniform into the stuff they need done.
Well, and I think that's a really important point that people really struggle with because the best way I heard it explained was a lot of people, especially somebody who has 31 years in, when they go in, they have this, I've been leading people for so long that I need that executive leadership type role and to come with it. Well, the problem that I heard somebody explain to it is you can't take somebody who is a general in the military and put them as CEO of the company, same way you wouldn't take a CEO of a company and automatically give them a star in the military, So there is that huge disconnect about how do you transition all those skills and assets, from one to the other.
Yeah, I think that in my experience, the skills are largely the same. However, their application is different.
Right.
The leadership is really leadership. Leadership is leadership. leadership is leadership. And if you're seeking to inspire people with a mission and a vision, then it's the same on the inside and the outside. As a matter of fact, the process that I use to build our new strategic plan at the United Way is the strategic planning process that we used when I was in the military. So, it's some of the same skill sets. The problem is most of the hiring managers don't understand it so that they can make that connection. They don't understand what you did, and you don't understand how to talk. This is the mistake I made. I said, hey, I'm a base commander. Hey, I'm always talking to these people on the outside. I'm talking compatible development. I'm talking OSHA. I'm talking EPA. I got this civilian thing down, right? So I write this resume and I take out all the acronyms and inevitably get in there. And then I think I've got a good resume, and I'm showing it to a guy. I met him through a network connection. And he says, so here's my resume. What do you think? Right. And he looks at it and he goes, I can't tell what you did. And I said, but I did this thing. He goes, yeah, I don't know what that means. What's the context of that? We don't use that kind of terminology in the corporate world. Right. And so I'm like, God, I'm sitting there at this lunch meeting with this guy, all depressed because I spent like weeks generating this thing. And then he said something really simple to me. He goes, look, TD, tell me what you did in each of these paragraphs, but tell me like I'm in the 8th grade.
Oh, I like that.
Right?
That's huge, yeah.
And so that made me think of, okay, really simple terms, right? Okay, there was this pot of money, and it was held in Jacksonville because that's who we worked for, and they gave it out to all the bases and their parts, and some bases couldn't spend all their money. So what I did was I built these programs that were able to spend that money here in Fort Worth. Since it was going to be unspent money at the end of the year, nobody wants to have unspent money on the table, so they were going to give it to me to spend. And so the guy turns to me and he goes, so what you did was you capitalized on previously unexploited markets and blah, 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 blah. I said, yes, that's what I did.
That's exactly. Whatever you just said, write that down.
That's exactly how it worked. I wrote that stuff down just like you did. But that experience taught me that not only do hiring managers not understand what I did, I didn't understand how to encapsulate that, how to say that in a way that they would understand it. And so that helped me a great deal to simplify the message and get to a point where I could take what are actually really transferable skills and articulate that to people that might give me a job.
No, that's awesome. And I think a lot of the veterans that are coming out need to hear that message. I know I get tapped every once in a while by the retiring officers that are looking for that career. They're like, Donnie, how do I find that spot? And the first thing I tell them is the biggest thing they need to do is take a huge dose of humble pie.
Yeah.
And realize because they, no matter how high of rank they got, they're no longer in the service. They're not going to make a straight lateral move. That they need to embrace that they have some sort of retirement and go get a job to learn the additional skill sets they need. And if they climbed in the military, they're going to climb in the civilian world just the same.
It's pretty fast.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, sometimes even faster. Once the civilian sector picks up some of the things that if you were a successful military, now everybody listens to this might not have been a successful military guy,
that was me. I was definitely not the successful military guy.
Well, yeah, or if you left the military with a big chicken dinner, and not the one you eat, you're not going to be probably somebody who may progress. But if you left with an honorable discharge and you performed in the military, the discipline, the stuff that you either brought in with you or that you learned while you were there, once the private sector company you're courting picks that up, I agree with you. You're going to rocket ship up through the ranks.
Well, but I think, there's a lot of guys that are like me. I did my 4, got the honorable, got out. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to be when I went in. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do once I got out. And the military doesn't prepare you for that civilian transition.
Not at all.
And then vice versa. The civilian world is not prepared for guys like me, who probably the military saved my life, kept me out of prison, that kind of stuff. So now I've learned to grow up a little bit, have a little bit of discipline, but still have no idea what the hell to do with my life. And the world has no idea what to do with me at that point.
That's a great point, because it was a journey of discovery, right? So I said, okay, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, so I'm going to become a consultant, because people did it. And I figured too, I went to a lot of these things that they tell you to go to, these networking breakfasts, right? Where people sit across from you and they throw a card at you and they make promises they have no intention of keeping. and so I went to a lot of those things, and I just spent my time doing these networking things. And I thought, man, this is not getting me anywhere, but if I could work with somebody, then they can maybe see in me what they're looking for. And so I started doing the consultant thing. I had an organization approach me that does a big gala every year for military. And they said, hey, we'd like you to fundraise for us. And I said, well, I've never fundraised in my life. They said, well, you just ask people for money and, you're the base commander, so maybe they'll listen to you. And so I'd start doing that. And then I had another company approach me that does management consulting, and we just met and talked stories over beer, and they said, hey, we'd like to use some of your stories as case studies. So I worked for them a little bit, turning them into case studies. And then I had another person that he owned a small development company, and he says, hey, I need you to come in and maybe take over for me as I move off. And I said, I don't know anything about commercial real estate. He says, I can teach you commercial real estate. What I can't do is teach any of my folks that know real estate leadership. So these were my first 3 clients. And so I'm sitting there, and of course I'm charging them all. So I'm like, hey, this isn't bad. Right? I'm like, pretty sweet gig, but it carried no benefits and it had no sustainability.
Right.
That's the deal. So, but in doing that, remember, I wound up working for a nonprofit. They would have never even looked at me if I didn't have some kind of fundraising in my background. So that very first group that said, hey, we'd like you to raise a little money for this gala, that was my ticket into the nonprofit sector. So by offering myself up to actually do something for people, even if it was on a temporary restricted basis as a consultant, brought in enough revenue to keep my wife
off your ass.
Yes. I was going to say living in the manner to which she's become accustomed, but off my ass would work too. She'd say, you get half a biscuit for breakfast this morning. The other half when you land a job.
Right.
True story. But anyway, it kept her happy, but also it introduced me to people in a way they could see, I wasn't just talking a talk, I was walking the talk.
Right.
So that wound up for me being a really great entree into the opportunities that I was presented with then. The Red Cross gig really came because the Red Cross had opened up an opportunity for my wife to be a board member when I was the base commander. And so because that happened, I wound up hosting some Red Cross events on the base and that kind of stuff. And so when the Red Cross changed, or matter of fact, almost the same time I was on the dais turning over command to the next guy, Rob Bennett, the Red Cross was undergoing this huge change. And they said, no more local CEOs. We're going to do a regional CEO, and the local CEOs aren't going to be considered for that because nobody wants to say, okay, this person took over the region, right? This Alice took over or whatever. So they started from scratch, and I built a relationship with them. So the outgoing CEO of the local Fort Worth region threw my name in a hat and said, if you're looking for a new person, this person's retiring, give them a call. So that relationship that I established while in uniform helped me land my first gig getting out.
Well, and I think you got a couple of cool things in there. One of the things that I heard I don't think a lot of people embrace is doing something, whether it be the consulting gig, because my career when I got out went the sales route, and it's not because I raised my hand and said I wanted to be a sales guy. It was a freaking job presented to me. So, I took it, and luckily I excelled in it. But that gave me a lot of experiences that allowed me to do a lot of fun, cool, crazy things. But the second thing that I don't think a lot of people tap into, and it's where I think the military screws up, is you just said that your relationships that you formed while being base commander helped you when your relationship get out. They don't teach you guys how to network, especially at the higher ranks, and how to really, get to know the people that can help you once you hit the civilian sector.
Yeah. My experience with Transition Assistance Program, or TAP, and as an 06, I went through what's called ETAP. And the difference between TAP and ETAP is the E. It was very good. Well, because they're both focused on, okay, here's how you get your VA benefits. Right. And here's, and here's how this works. And so they walk you through that kind of DOD and VA centric post uniformed life. But you're right, man, in terms of, there's a little bit on resume writing, but I found it to be almost unusable.
Right.
On the outside, things had changed and morphed so fast. It's also very different by industry. So,
and then that resume thing, because I remember going through one class, and what all they are trying to do is to civilianize your skills and talents. They're not writing the resume to get you a job. It's writing to. For me, I worked on Humvees and 5 tons. Well, you're a mechanic. That means you can follow procedures. well, what the hell does that mean? Right?
No, it's true. It's true. And that's very practical. Like, for example, I tell people you have a different resume for every single job description that you get. And this is something I tell people this all the time, because when human resources in the military is like, oh, that's who the detailer sent me. That's who I've got. Right. Unless they do something stupid and then they push them away and get somebody new.
Well, human resources for me was Gunny, right? Because Gunny's going to step in, dude, pull your head out. What the F were you thinking? I mean, that was human resources.
Yeah. You need some attitude adjustment. Yeah. Human resources. But so on the outside, I discovered human resources. It was a new thing, right? So I tell people all the time, your resume that the military teaches you to write is really just an exercise. It's an academic exercise.
Yeah, 100%.
If you're going to get in a job, if you're going to get past I call them the HR trolls. No offense, HR people, sorry, but that's just the name I have for them. But I call them that because they're like the one under the bridge that's guarding the way, right? It's like, no, you can't get in because the job description has these requirements, and there's one of them that you haven't addressed in your resume. You don't make the cut. Because they've got plenty of people that do. So every single resume, you start with the job description of the job you're looking at, and you say, okay, it says I've got to have this. You find something in your history that equates to that.
Right.
And you answer it clearly, because if you don't, the HR troll will just put you in the no stack. He's got plenty in the yes stack.
Well, and to that point, when I was doing a lot of hiring at one point, especially for salespeople, we'd put an ad out there and we'd get a couple of 100 resumes.
Yeah.
And when you're stacking up against it, I mean, you're just flipping through until you find one that just magically stands out from the rest, and then you take a second to read that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the second thing I would tell the guys is quit doing a traditional resume. Do something to shake it up, graphics, something that makes it visually appealing.
I think that's cool. I've seen some really neat ones now that are like, online resumes, right, that have everything from sophisticated animations on them and stuff like that. But something, especially if you're getting into something that's a shook up industry, or an industry that's in the process of being shaken up. But that's now on the other side, I'm a hiring manager, right? So I'm hiring through HR and stuff, and I'm seeing the same thing. Hey, these people don't meet the requirements. And if I really want to interview that person, I've got to reach beyond HR now and pull them forward.
Right.
Make it easy on yourself. Just find something. Inevitably, you're going to have done something in your career that approximates that requirement. If not, then you don't need to be looking at that job anyway.
Right.
They're trying to look for you.
You've gotten out of the base, and that's awesome stuff for all the transitioning guys. So how long did you work at the Red Cross before you ended up at United Way?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, led the Red Cross, the North Texas region of the Red Cross, as its CEO for 4 years. And that was what an incredible experience. I mean, it was about moving hardware and people into areas that were problem areas, much like the military is. There was a logistics chain associated with that. There was morale associated with that. As a matter of fact, because 96% of the Red Cross's work is done by volunteers, it was a lot like working with reservists, right? So a lot of the same things that happen, and I found it to be a really, really rewarding job, and it taught me some of the other tenets of nonprofit work, social sector work. I don't like calling it nonprofit because it's kind of stupid, isn't it?
It's the dumbest name in the world. Because as soon as you say nonprofits, like we don't want to make a profit. Well, what business functions without a profit?
You know what? That you have hit on something that's really key. And there's a big ground wave going over right now that's trying to get the social agencies to start being recognized as able to work in the same rules that the for-profit sector.
Yeah.
Because when you look at it, they're competing for the same money.
Absolutely.
Right. And so marketing expenses and those kind of things. It's funny, when I first got interviewed, when I got the United Way job, the young reporter sat down with me and the executive I was relieving. And she said, okay, she's going to do an interview with my arrival there. First question out of her mouth, how much do you make? I said, well, let's start with you. How much do you make? and she's looking at me with her mouth agape. And I said, right? Isn't that stupid for me to say that? I mean, if you're sitting here talking to an incoming CEO at Pier 1 or some other, is that the first question out of your mouth? Or are you kind of interested in maybe where they're taking the organization?
Right. The vision of it, right.
Yeah. But it's that thought about the quote nonprofits that you can't make so much in it. I'm telling you, man, why is it that the next shit hot business grad out of Harvard can go and make violent video games and make their fortune doing that? But if they want to go out and find a cure for pediatric cancer, they're going to be a parasite if they make money doing that.
Well, and I think the story has to be told. I mean, I got a CEO that's raising $1 billion to solve cancer, whatever else, whatever their mission is in life. I don't give a shit if he makes $1 million. Right?
Yeah.
Because the work and effort is taken. Where I run into the problem, and I think this is where marketing has to come into play, is you get the asshole who ran Wounded Warrior Project, and he was spending $1 million on parties and drinks and alcohol, right? That's when shit gets carried away. But had that guy been a civilian sector CEO, right, and actually been trading on the stock exchange, his ass would have got shit canned a long time ago.
That's right. You're talking equivalency of rules there. You're right.
Yeah.
If you're paid the value you bring to the organization, then that's the place you want to be.
Absolutely.
I agree. And we're going to start seeing major changes when that thought process starts driving more things in terms of problems we've been struggling with for years and decades even that are suddenly going to start getting changed. Like infant mortality and low birth weight, like homelessness, all completely solvable problems. You just need to have the resources and the cross-sector collaboration to make it happen.
Yeah. I think that's the other thing that destroys nonprofits besides their name is collaboration. I think you have a ton of organizations that are on the same mission, but because they're nonprofit, because they're siloed, they're not working together to accomplish things, which is causing these huge two companies that are trying to accomplish the same thing in a market get better, competing against each other. Nonprofits, they don't even talk to each other.
Right. It's true. And the private sector's got a name for that, right? Co-opetition.
Yeah.
Let's do this to raise our market because we're both going to get better. We're still going to be competitors, right? But we need market share. So the nonprofit sector, the social sector, I call it the social independent sector, is starting to think the same way now. As a matter of fact, my current organization, United Way, we've taken a percentage, a small percentage initially, but that grows every year, that we're taking in our resources we allocate to community agencies. And we've set it aside to be systems change money. In other words, you don't get access to this unless you're changing the environment in which people suffer. You're not just treating individual people that suffer. You're changing their circumstances.
Nice.
So you're changing that system. It's kind of like there's a story we like to tell about this village, and the village is invaded by an ogre. And the ogre takes all the village's babies and starts throwing them in the stream. And the crazed townspeople take their nets and they're running in to dip the babies out of the stream before they go off the edge of the waterfall. When two of these villagers look at each other and go, look, why don't we leave these guys to dip babies and let's go back and slay that ogre?
Right.
Right. So they go back in the village and kill the ogre. And now far fewer villages are having to dip babies out of the stream. So the idea is if we take resources and we attack the root causes of these social ills, that we're spending a lot less money treating the symptoms of it downstream. So that's where we're taking our resources at United Way and trying to lead collaborations in the community that get that and will now work together to stop some of these things from being issues.
Yeah, no, that's huge. That's huge. That's a great story to represent that. How did the United Way gig come about for you? I mean, Red Cross, did they fire you? No, I'm kidding.
There was a pretty good chance of that. That was a good guess. United Way approached me. The board, there were members of the board that knew where I was at the United Way and had a similar background of mine. And they threw my name to a headhunter. The guy that was in charge of the United Way at the time was retiring. And they said, hey, we need to go find somebody that'll come in and take this gig. Funny part is I told them when they came and talked to me, I said, look, I don't even like you guys. So, right? And it was true. I mean, when I was at the Red Cross, it was a United Way agency. And we had started because the footprint for that Red Cross job was enormous. So we had relationships with 45 different United Ways across North Texas. And when I left that job, we had 17. So the vast majority of them I walked away from because there was no return on investment. I would spend a lot of time and energy with cultivating these relationships with the United Way, and then they would give us a small amount of money, and so the ROI just wasn't good.
Right.
So we had amicable splits during that time with most of them. But I told these folks, I said, look, if you're interested in changing the organization, then I'm all in, because I think what United Way could be to the community is A, every community needs it, and B, it could make big change in things that we've been struggling with for a long time. And so they listened and they said, yeah, and we went through the process and did the interviews and stuff. And then I was privileged to get hired and got to start building a new executive team again. hearkening back on experiences I had.
Right.
When I build teams now on the civilian side, the vision I have in my head is a particular team that I worked with at a base in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, when I was a lieutenant commander and a commander in the Navy in 04 and 05, and was the officer in charge of a small reserve squadron up there. And we had such a tight department head group that there was nothing we couldn't do. We were winning all the awards, the maintenance awards, winning the Battle E. We were winning all this stuff because we were tight. We had each other's backs, and we understood how to call each other out, how to support each other, and we got along too. We drank together. That didn't hurt, And we laughed our asses off and had great successes. And so whenever I model teams now, it's with that vision in my head that I create these teams and create the synergies, the opportunities to do offsites and do dumb stuff together and to try impossible things and fail and regroup and fail again and regroup and succeed. But it's all rooted in that experience as a military leader.
Yeah, and here's the funny thing is, growing up when I got into corporate America, the biggest thing that kept being preached and told to me was, you don't fraternize with, your boss. You don't do all these type of things. Same thing you're taught in military. But what I found is the bosses that actually spent time with their people and helped groom them. Same thing with the leadership teams. The leadership teams that actually went and had lives outside of work together and, groomed them or rose up together, if you will, became the stronger leadership teams because there was a personal connection. So I could pick up the phone and say, dude, what the hell are you thinking? Pull your head out of your ass. And it wasn't from a space of I'm talking down to you. It's, dude, we drink together on the weekends. You can't do this kind of shit here in the office. And it takes things to a different level. So
no, an example I had that reflects exactly what you just talked about. When I was a mission commander in the aircraft I flew in P-3 Orions, it was an anti-submarine warfare aircraft, and one of our principal safety of flight crewmen was a radar operator. That's the person that kept us out of cumulo granite, right? So
right.
that person kept the airplane in the air and out of the mountainside. In addition to being really necessary in the mission to find the submarine. Well, we're out there pre-flight, and then one of my crew members comes up to me and says, hey, Chris smells pretty bad back there at the radar station. So I go back there, and our radar operator, and I can smell, alcohol on his breath. And I'm like, man, when was the last time you were drinking? We had a rule, 12-hour separation, bottle to brief. And, he gives me some bullshit about, I just had one. It was 12 hours ago. And I'm like, hey.
You don't smell like a brewery for,
Right. So I motioned. I said, come back here in the back of the airplane. So he comes back in the airplane. And the way I put it to him was this. Do you have any idea what position you've put me in? I'm the mission commander for this crew. The safety of this entire crew is my responsibility. And you have just stepped right firmly in the middle of that and given me the finger. And so you created this situation where I now have to do something, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull you off this flight. You're on report. So I pulled him off the flight. We had to get the ready alert cruise sensor operator to fly with us. And he went through the process and, went through captain's mask, on judicial punishment at the time. You guys call it office hours. So he went through NJP and he wound up getting restricted to barracks. But every night I would go by and see him, bring him something from the mess hall, play chess with him, and then I'd go back to my own barracks.
Right.
And later on, when he got done with that, he said, hey, I screwed up. I know I screwed up. I put you in a bad situation. I'll never do it again. And for the rest of that deployment, that guy pulled my ass out of hot water twice when he found submarines that we had given up on because he was constantly sweeping the radar. He was extra efforts given back. And years later, he wound up running his own trucking company, and he sent me a note on social media saying, hey, I just remember that time that you did what you had to do, but you never gave up on me, kind of thing, Well,
and that's huge. I think that says a lot about your leadership style, the fact that you went to his room every night afterwards, and it's almost that, hey, there's nothing personal in here. I mean, it's business.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell people all the time is you can't take shit personal. Business is business. Right? Doesn't mean you can't be friends. Doesn't mean you can't hang out and everything else. But at the end of the day, it's still business. So.
Yeah. And it applies to the outside. To your point, morale is morale.
Absolutely.
And you're either an engaged leader or you're not an engaged leader. And your team sees that. Like it's cellophane. They can see you whether you're active in their lives or not, whether you really care or you're just paying lip service. And so that stuff that you did in the military, it definitely applies here. And that's why the vision that I have for the teams I build now is rooted in that initial squadron.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So where's this journey taking you, bud? I mean, I know you're at the United Way. You've been there a couple of years now. Yeah. Where's this all taken? I mean, because you're one of the most active guys in the community in Fort Worth. I mean, every time you turn around, you're doing something with somebody, and I'm sure your wife is about ready to put her foot up your ass at some point.
Well, Barbara and I have a vision, and it's a very different one. This will be the last job I ever have. You know, I will be at United Way until we have got done what I need to do, what I came here to do. And as you might imagine, you know, I'm building a team behind me that can continue to lead and continue to go on. And you know, something that we've always done well in the military, right, is you know, succession planning. It's done for us in a lot of cases.
Right.
But you know, trying to build a good succession plan. Eventually, Barbara and I are going to live on a catamaran.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we'll go to sea and see the world. 45-foot catamaran. That's
a cool. Why a catamaran? I mean, out of all the boats you could pick, you're picking a catamaran. I mean,
yeah, well,
45-footer's a big damn catamaran.
It's a big and hey, you know, Mama didn't raise no fool. I mean, it was Barbara's pick. Let's talk about that.
So you got the yes fear going well. I like it.
Right. I like that idea, Barbara. Yeah. Now the catamaran's real stable, and it's got a lot of space, right? You know, one hull is where the owners live, and the other hull is where guests live. And we got this rule. I'm not going to charter it because I don't want to risk I have to spend days with somebody who might be an asshole, right?
Right.
So instead, we're going to take people we know. So let's say, Donnie, you know, you want to come out and sell. It's like, hey, we're going to be in Key West on this day. We can sell you to Aruba if you got a week open. Yeah, sure. So if you show up on the pier with a case of wine, you're in. So the rest is on us.
I like it. We're going to stay close friends.
That's the vision, and that's where we're going. We're both committed. You know, this is something I got into because I remember I didn't like the organization initially. I wouldn't have gone after it, but when I started thinking about what it could be, then it was really exciting. I believe that the United Way can lead enduring change in the socioeconomic fabric of Fort Worth, working very closely with the business community, which is why, to your point, I try to do so many things.
Right.
Because it's team ball, man. We're not going to social sector our way. We're not going to social service our way to solutions in any of this stuff. But if we get government, for-profit, social sector all working together, we can solve all of them.
Yeah.
And so when I get to the point where we're humming on all those cylinders and I can hand it off and have it led by people more capable at process and detail, then that's the direction we'll go, and we'll
sometimes us non-necessarily process-oriented people, we're just really good at being at the front of the room and getting the process people to do what they're great at.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, understanding that is one thing that a lot of people don't, you know, they struggle. They're like, I need to get better at this. I need to get better at this. You know what? Some things that's true early on in your career as you're developing your skill set. But by the time you're places where we are, you know, you play to your strengths. This is who 100%. I am, right? This is what my skill set led me to. And this is who I'm not. You know, have the self-awareness and the moral courage to say that's what I'm not good at. And that's when you can start fleshing your team out with people who fill those gaps. And that makes
and I think it's a huge point is a lot of people when they're looking at their teams, they're trying to hire themselves, right? They want somebody who is as ambitious as them, as crazy, whatever else. And it never works because you get two people and all you're going to do is butt heads against each other.
You got it.
You got to hire people that fill those gaps of the things that you suck at.
Yeah, but you got to be able to see them first. You got to be honest
100%.
with yourself, right? And to be able to identify them. And I think that's another benefit from military folks. This is kind of the piece I tell Barbara all the time. You know, it's like, look, I've been blessed in my life to have got into something where I led sailors and I led, you know, combat air crews, and I led people to do heroic, amazing, risky things, right, every day. I don't need to seek significance anymore. And I think everybody who has worn the uniform, everybody who's worn the cloth of the country has done something in their lives that is significant. And so now, you know, people can get out and they can pursue wealth and they can pursue all that other stuff, but they're never going to get caught in that tail chase of constantly having to try to become significant because it's something that they've done. And that gives me a great deal of latitude.
And I hope everybody heard that, because I don't 100% agree that a lot of people believe that. I think a lot of people are still running through life trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up, right? And there is some of that tail chasing going on. But if they were to embrace that part of their life life experience up to this point is there has been significance in their life, and they need to own up to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then when you do that, though, you're free to go, okay, these are things I don't do well. These are things I do well. Back to that honesty piece, being emotionally honest with yourself. And then what you do and what you are good at, you can be proud of, and you can optimize and leverage for your company, your organization, whatever. And then what you're not, you've got the moral courage and the self-awareness to say, let's hire somebody that can do this. That's how I've built my teams, is to say, I'm not really a detail person. I don't follow through process. So I need to hire a group of really good execution agents that can write SOPs, that can create new documents and that kind of stuff. And then, you lead with this vision, and then you help kind of vector that into the operational piece, and then the rest of these geniuses take it and make it tactical.
Well, and I think there's also a key with those geniuses is they've got to be able to go toe-to-toe with a strong personality, right? I mean, you got to have somebody on your team that when I'm like, hey, we're going this direction, they're like, okay, Donnie, thank you. We got it. We'll do our thing. Versus the yes man,
Oh, yeah, dude, it's true. Strong people hire strong people.
Absolutely.
And being a leader, showing the kind of strength it takes to hire somebody. It's funny, true story. When I was over at Cross, I was in a situation where I needed to hire a new fundraiser because our head fundraiser retired. And so the person that was the number 2 approached me and said, hey, I'm interested in that position. And I said, well, I'm going to make it hard on you because we're going to do a national search. So I like you, but you're going to really have to prove that you're the right person because I'm not going to mess this one up. We have the right person here. So, with that very honest and open conversation, this person proceeded to show me why she was the best for it. And the most important part to me was because she was the acting person in that role for the time being, because she was the number 2, she was in meetings with me. And I would say, this is where I think we need to go. And she'd say, well, I see it a different way. I don't think that's a good way to go. And I would say, oh, well, tell me why. And she would tell me why. Of course, it's important. 2 things are important about that situation. If you're going to buck the boss, be right.
True.
Be right. And the other thing is, what do you think that did in my eyes, looking at her as a candidate for that key position? Did it weaken her or strengthen her?
100% strengthen. But I think there's also an additional play in there is if you're going to buck up, if you're wrong, be okay being wrong. Don't take it personal.
That's fair.
Right? Yeah. Because I think a lot of people make badass number 2s, even though in their mind they should be number 1s, right? When they're really built to be a strong, badass number 2, and have your thought process of put your opinion out there, be it out there, and be okay that somebody doesn't buy into your same belief as you throw your information and knowledge out there.
Yeah, great point. And I think a healthy team, fosters that kind of awareness. Hey, I'm not going to win all the time, but I'm going to represent my piece. And sometimes it's going to be very valuable and necessary. Right. But yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So this has been fun, TD. Thanks for coming on and do this. A couple of quick things. What is probably the biggest life lesson you've learned on this whole journey of yours? What's that big thing that because some sort of experience or something happened to you, it groomed you to where you are now?
The biggest limiter is something we place on ourselves, and it's fear. The things in my life that I've not accomplished, the things that were the things I never tried. And the reason I didn't try them was because I was afraid to try. I was afraid to fail. I was afraid to fail in front of my peers. I was afraid to look stupid. I was afraid to be the one that opened up to ask a question that I thought was stupid and somebody else wound up asking it and it was brilliant, right? That kind of thing.
Right.
Fear is the biggest crippler. And so when I talk to young groups and people ask me a similar question, well, what's kind of the one thing you'd lead them with? It's always the same. It's fear nothing. If we can lose fear, we can gain so much else that's even beyond our comprehension.
A lot of people have that kind of phrase, face fear, take it heads on, but it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people start listening to the voices in their head, which I call the gremlin,
I know the gremlin.
Oh, yeah. He's an asshole. Right? And so they start listening to him versus actually facing that fear. So how does somebody actively face that fear? What's the tactical things that they can do to push through that?
Well, for me, at the time, I didn't really realize that that's what was weighing on me. So awareness was a big problem. I look back at some of the things, the missed opportunities in my life, and I can now, with the benefit of hindsight, I can see that it was fear that limited me from doing that. At the time, though, I just kind of talked my way through it. So I think I've learned from that experience that one of the best things I can give myself is a third person look. And I can step outside of a situation and look at the players involved and go, okay, if I'm an objective, observer here, what am I seeing happening in front of me? And when I can do that and kind of depersonalize it, then I can say, man, I'm really being a wuss here. Or I can't believe you're going to let that opportunity go because what's the worst that can happen to you?
Right. 100%.
And there's some great leadership thinkers, right? Like John Maxwell and folks that say, you never fail, you learn, right? You succeed or you learn. And those kind of things have been something that's helped me grow and mature as a professional. It's definitely a tough order to do. It's something that I don't think there's a magic bean for. It's just something that you have to mature yourself into. And I found that giving myself that third person look has helped expedite my maturity in those kind of decisions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So everybody has something they want to promote, whether it's their business, their life, this, that, and the other. I guarantee you have something that you would love all the listeners to know about something you're working on. What is it?
Sure. It's the United Way thing. Everybody's lands in some passion area. And for me, the passion is taking the stuff that 31 years in the Navy taught me and making it apply to changing lives for entire populations. And so the work that I'm doing now with some great smart people, some great volunteers, some superb leaders, is focused on changing things in this case, Tarrant County, but not limited to there. I think when we change the face of what United Way is to our community, other communities will look at it. I got a call from Albany, New York just recently because we published our strategic plan and some people interested in hearing more about it up there. So if I had to promote anything, I would just say, folks, pay attention to what's going on with United Way in Tarrant County. Ask me all the hard questions because I've had them. I've asked a lot of them myself.
Right.
And go with us on this journey to making Tarrant County the best place to live in America.
That's awesome, brother. Hey, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. I know you've got a million things going on in your life, brother. So thanks a lot. If you need anything, man, you let me know.
I will. I will be seeing you around. Definitely beer.
Guys, thanks so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. Please comment, share, tell me what you think. Let the world know about this podcast. It would mean everything to me.